Hey, what's happening, everybody? Good morning. It's Robert Phoenix once again broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg, Texas. How is everyone today? I have to go over to the YouTube side of things and do a little checking in on that part of the world. Yep, we're good to go. So everything is up and running. All systems are connected. Ho, ho, ho. There we go. We have 10 Dragon, 108 Dragon, 14. Come in now. Good morning. How are you? I was a good citizen last night. I went to bed early. I went to bed at I think 8:45, 9 o'clock, powered by a couple of melatonin to get me through the night, to sleep through the night. A few other sundry things that I take before bedtime, and got up bright and early and fairly refreshed at about 5:45 a.m. So I've been up for almost 3 hours now and putting together today's show, which I hope you'll find to be both informative and, mm, revelatory at whatever level it becomes revelatory for you. Yesterday, we talked about cheaters and we talked about the system being revealed. Oh, look who's here. Come on, let's go. It's your time. You know who it is. It wouldn't be a day without this guy right here, the astrological cat, Jasper. Jasper, you want to say hi to your friends and fans out there? You just want to rub my chin, which is what you normally do. Either way, fine. Let's see who else is in the chat room. We got Uncle Glenn and Mary and JMP Love and Jennifer and Sticky Marks. And there is Mr. MD Maury Demare, the world renowned Maury Demare, whose legend keeps growing daily. There's Kathy. Hi, Kathy. My outside. So that's funny. That's really funny. So yes, I was a good citizen. I've been rested, very very well rested today. So, all right, Jasper, what do you want to do? You want to go sit behind the computer and go warm your tailbone on the computer screen? Is that what you want to do? So some of the follow up to yesterday's show is quite interesting, and it's going to be another kind of iteration on that theme today because there seems to be this kind of revealing that's taking place with a lot of these institutions in our lives that are not always what they seem to be. I have somebody sent me a post recently about the wind turbines. Those wind turbines that they have, those giant things that they set up for, so they have the propellers. Well, those propellers don't last forever. They don't last forever. They have a lifespan just like everything else does. And they found that like 50,000 of these propellers just buried. Like, I mean, how environmentally sound is that? It's not environmentally sound at all. What is this? Hold on. I just got to get rid of this thing. So it doesn't really fall into that camp that we've been talking about, but it kind of does. And so much, it's like it's this vaunted institution, the environmentalists who wind up having, this is this thing, right? We have these giant windmills, these turbines, so that we can create alternative energy. What they haven't figured out is what the fuck to do with the big props once they're no longer usable. They don't recycle them, not at all. They bury them. So there's a graveyard of these. Have you ever seen those things too? They're massive. They're huge, absolutely huge. Something going on with Russia. RT News says the government just resigned. Let's see. Let's check that out. RT. See what Maury is referring to here. What does that mean by the government? Let's see what we got. I'm not seeing anything about resignations at this moment. on rt.com. It says, why do you allow the United States to bully Iranian FM to Europe over nuclear tensions? I'll do a screen share just so you guys can see. Maury, if you have a link, you want to drop that in, feel free to do that in chat. But just following up on that, I don't see it. So this is where we are today, right there. And if we go to Russia, what do we have? Putin proposes major amendments to Russia's constitution, including about his own post, says people should vote on changes. Medvedev is going to become deputy head of Russia's Security Council. And Russian government resigns after Putin's State of the Nation address. Okay, here we go. So this is what Maury's referring to. Let's check this out. Let's see what we have here. So this is just 1 minute ago, the update. So wow, this is heavy news, man. This is really heavy news. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev has announced the entire government is resigning in a surprise statement released shortly after President Vladimir Putin delivered his annual State of the Nation address. Accepting the resignation, Putin thanked ministers for their hard work and asked them to function as a caretaker government until a new one can be formed. That's typical Putin. The guy's a robot. Medvedev and Putin had met for a work meeting to discuss the State of the Nation address earlier on Wednesday. The Kremlin said Medvedev explained that this cabinet is resigning in accordance with the Article 115 of the Russian Constitution, which states that the government can offer its resignation to the president, who in turn can either accept or reject it. So this is interesting because Putin can't reject the resignation. Odd. But he's accepting it. During his speech, Putin said he intended to create a position of Deputy Secretary of Russia's Security Council, which will be offered to Medvedev, which apparently he has accepted. Medvedev's move to the new role will mean Russia will get a new prime minister whenever a new government is formed. I mean, I don't think that this is anything to worry about. I don't think this is anything to worry about. I don't think this is some kind of major indictment on Russia and their government. It's probably something along the lines that these guys saw the writing on the wall with Putin's vision of where he wants to take Russia with this State of the Union address. And like, we're done. We're done, and we're done because of fill in the blanks, right? Whatever for whatever reason. But these sea changes, the way that the rest of the world governs is very different than how we govern, which is why, as fucked up as our version of so-called democracy and this version of the republic is, right? So we're a republic and we're fused with this kind of version of democracy. It's still, in some ways, is more consistent and predictable. Like, we have elections every 4 years, and then usually those stick, unless, of course, somebody or a certain party gets a spur up their ass and decides that they want to be involved in impeachment proceedings for the entire tenure of the president that's in office, which we're seeing currently. And by the way, this is all going to happen. They're taking this thing to the Senate. It's going to happen on next Tuesday. That's the day when everything begins to crank up. Now, next Tuesday is going to be in the 21st, right? It's 21st. So it's really at the tail end. What is today? Today's Wednesday, right? So it's at the tail end of Capricorn. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Aquarius hits on the 21st or 20th. It changes a little bit. I have to find out and drill in, right? So it's anaretic Capricorn or early Aquarius, which is interesting time because we know that February tends to be the month that these coups are engineered. And I've looked at all these different coups and all these different revolutions, and they all tend to have a very strong Aquarian or Uranian kind of program running in the background. So, and we know that the actual impeachment proceedings will extend into Aquarius. So it could be very revolutionary. Getting back to these different governments, like Salvini was rocking and rolling in Italy, but he had to share his government with the socialists. So he was doing this interesting kind of synthesis with his brand of nationalism and these socialists who tend to be globalists. So what happened is that Salvini called for a new election in order to. I mean, we see this all the time. Go look at Israel. They're going to be on their third election with Netanyahu coming up again, or third or fourth. I mean, they can't seem to get it together because, Gantz has so many votes and Netanyahu has so many votes. And then there's this one party that's got like what, 10% of the Knesset. And so they're the ones that are holding the votes in kind of this uneasy balance. And so what they do then is it's again, they have to form a new government. I mean, this is not something that is outside the wheelhouse of these governments outside of the United States. So I wouldn't read too much into Russia having a government and a bunch of people resigning. Putin's Medvedev is still there, and those guys are the twin towers of the Russian Federation, the Russian government. So, but hey, it bears watching. Thanks for bringing it up. It's an interesting news item, and that's what we try to do here on 15 Minutes of Flame, is cover some of the news. I know it's not always as philosophical and kind of as, theoretically deep, as some, like maybe the Sunday night show, or, maybe where we go with Chris and Steve and some other guests on Friday. I go there occasionally, but this is a way for us to sort of like cleanse, right? We get to cleanse ourselves of the media toxicity that is rampant and running through our own cellular membrane, right? So if you think about it, right, we're like bombarded with either 2G or 4G or 5G, and that shit's going through us all the time. And those thought forms that are embedded in the news and in all the chatter and the banter and all the stuff, right, that theoretically, if we tune into the right channel, we'll ingest. Well, that stuff's going through us all the time anyway. It's going through vis-a-vis a digital transmission. And those are thoughts, and those thoughts actually have power. We know that thoughts have power to a certain degree. So when we are able to intellectually cleanse ourselves of those thoughts, or mentally cleanse ourselves of those thoughts, it can be a very therapeutic experience. All right. So let's get into some of the stuff that I have teed up today. The latest, of course, is the stuff that's going on with where we have here. I got to find this now. I got a lot today. There's a lot on the table today. And then you threw Russia on top of it. How about that? Let's see. Let me go over here. Okay, let's do this. I'm going to run this this video. It's the Project Veritas video. Some of you are aware of it. It is one of the campaign coordinators for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and his name is Kyle Jurek. And I'm going to have there are subtitles on this video, so I'm going to keep the volume on the video down, and you guys will be able to see what's transpiring vis-a-vis the subtitles. So let's get into this. This is breaking from yesterday. It broke pretty much. Where are we? I got to get this on my other. Hold on one second. Uno momentito. I have to do this on my other browser because that's the way Zoom works. Let's see what we got here. Let's do this. And bada bing. And paste that. All right. There she blows. Okay. All right. So I'm going to expand the screen on this. It'll start small and then we'll get bigger. I'm going to get into full screen so you can read all the subtitles. And let's see. Okay, there it is. And you guys can see that now. There it is. And I'm going to hit this. And then away we go. Let's full screen this bad boy. So this is a field organizer. Bernie doesn't get the nomination, right? Basically, it'll start in Milwaukee. When they fucking push back in other cities, will fucking makes explosion sound. So if Trump gets elected, fucking cities burn. Okay, so this is the intro. Project Veritas right here. Do you think people can be re-educated? This gets into the idea of camps that that the weathermen brought up during the 1970s with the Larry Grathwold interviews. Germany spent billions of dollars re-educating fucking people. It likes to say fuck a lot to not be Nazis. Like we're probably going to do the same fucking thing here. That's kind of what Bernie's whole fucking like, hey, free education, because we're going to teach you not to be a fucking Nazi. There's a reason why Joseph Stalin gulags, right? And actually, gulags were a lot better than what the CIA has told us. Oh, right. Really? So he's, oh my God, this guy's nuts. People are actually paid a living wage in gulags. They had conjugal visits in gulags. Oh, okay. Gulags were actually meant for like re-education. Greatest way to break a fucking billionaire, break rocks. I see. Right. So are you going to get, you're going to get Bernie Marcus in there to break rocks? Bernie doesn't get the nomination. He goes to a second round at DNC. Fucking Milwaukee will burn. He looks like a Russian revolutionary from the Bolshevik period, doesn't he? Other cities will just explode. If your speech is calling for the elimination of people based on race or gender or religious, like whatever reason, things that people can't change, all right, then you should expect a fucking violent reaction. Okay. And you deserve it. All right. Be ready to be in Milwaukee for the DNC convention. So this guy is a full-blooded revolutionary, living wage in the gulags, conjugal visits. Okay. Right. So gulags are a really cool place to be. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you guys get the drift here. It'll be interesting to see what happens and what the fallout from the Sanders campaign will be. I doubt they'll do anything. I think they'll keep this guy on board. It's free speech, right? It's free speech. What he's proposing is something quite different. You know, he's proposing something that's seditious. It's seditious, and I'm sure he'll have a visit from somebody. Because that's how these things work, right? That's how these things work. So again, what we're seeing here is this kind of radical overreach of these people that are either in government, involved in government, wanting to be in government. It's all kind of surfacing now. We're seeing this. And that's not the only story that's breaking, but it's definitely worth noting. One of the things that the Sanders camp has in its favor is that the New York Times is dredging up yet another conspiracy. The New York Times is now dredging up a conspiracy that the Russians were behind the Ukrainian hacking. I can bring this up as well. Check this out. See if I can find it. Hold on. It's right up here. Where is it? Yeah, so the new thing now is that the new I'm not even gonna bring up the link, but here the New York Times has stated that they have proof. Of course, they have proof, just like they have proof when there were rods and yellow cake crit or somewhere in that area, right? Now they've got new information that the Russians hacked into the Burisma computer systems, and that it's the Russians that planted the evidence on Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. This is going to be the next wave, okay? This is the next wave of just lurid and tepid tabloid journalism that the New York Times is stooping to. And I'm not even here to defend Trump. You could just put anybody's name in the presidential position, and it's been very clear that the New York Times wants to sell papers because nobody reads papers anymore. So part of what they're doing is they're generating their own news cycles so that they can be relevant and people can buy their online access to the New York Times or buy the Sunday edition and, you know, feel really smart. You know, there are people who buy the Sunday edition of the New York Times and they dose on NPR the rest of the week and really smart. Between Amy Goodman and the New York Times, they're the most informed people on the planet, or so they think. And I'm sure you know a few of these people. All things considered, is probably part of their media diet as well. So this is the new scandal, the new wave. They're probably going to have another round of investigations and waste more of your time and more of your tax dollars. Now, we're living in the age of computerization, and we're living in the age where there's the veil, the thin wall between me and you and any other entity is pierceable and collapsible at any time. So it's not just, say, the Russians who could go in and theoretically hack the Ukrainian servers. There's also people who would pose as Russians. Just because the hacking code might be in Cyrillic, it doesn't necessarily mean they're Russians. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's going to be very hard moving forward to trust sources and the identification of news. Now, we're going to see that when the True Node goes into Gemini, because we're going to get multiple stories, deep fakes. You know it. I think tomorrow I want to do this story, or I want to look at what's going on with this one group who is an Israeli-based group that has been involved in creating scenarios where they can shut things down, including elections. Whitney Webb has done a lot of work. I wish I could get her on my show. She's one person I'd love to get. I reached out to her one time and there was no traction there. But she's done a lot of work around this one group. Of course, it comes out of that 8200 group, which comes out of the Talpiot program, which is all about the brain drain and using guys that have been trained by the IDF in cybersecurity, cyber surveillance. It's like the best and the brightest. If you go back and look at Operation Green Flame and, you know, kind of calling the best psychics and the best intuitive people, 8200s, very similar, except they're computer nerds, right? So there are spin-off companies now coming off of this Project 8200, and Paul Singer, who runs Elliott Capital and is this vulture capitalist, is up to his eyeballs in financing these companies. And what happens is some of these people that are trained in Project 8200 come over and begin to get high-level positions inside of American companies. So there's this whole process of inserting people that are trained. What's really interesting too is that Singer's group is actually getting tax dollars from the United States government. He's got, this is not going through Elliott Capital. It's going through another thing he's created. I'll try to hunt some of that down. Anyway, Whitney Webb apparently is getting some threats now from people. You know, you're getting close when you start getting threatened, and that's a terrible thing. But again, living in the society that we're in now, it's inevitable that we would all stumble across at least one piece of information on a weekly basis that is outright fallacious and a lie. And if you follow it deep enough and long enough, you'll find out who the perps are, no matter where they are. So anyway, 2020, especially when that true node goes into Gemini, it's going to be very hard to determine what's real, because the project, I'm gonna try to bring it up tomorrow. What they've done is they've figured out a scenario where they can stop the 2020 election from happening. And as you know, I've had some doubts about this election actually taking place. I mean, I've looked at the chart for election night, and it's absolutely terrible. It's like one of the worst charts I've seen. It's all bloody with a Mars-Pluto square. So, maybe it's an indication of things that happen during that night that forestall the actual election itself. So this group is working on, how do you do that? Well, they've been working on this for a while now. It's sort of like, okay, well, we can turn all the traffic lights green. We can hijack all the self-driving cars and set them out. And so there's a massive state of confusion. And what they do is they game test this stuff. So they have one side is creating the chaos, and then they have the other side generally positioned by the local authorities, the police, and how they're going to counter the other team's moves, so to speak, to put the brakes on it, and so that we could actually have an election. They've done this, I think, 3 times in Boston, and the third time, the good guys, the black group, which is what they call them, were actually able to put the brakes on this insurrection, but not after like 32 people or something like that died. So this is where we're headed. This is the world we're headed into. There'll be times where people will say things and they probably didn't say them. You'll see images of people and it'll look like them, but it won't be them. And this is going to really start to take hold in 2020 with the South Notarious. The truth takes a back seat to information and data. And sometimes information and data can be sculpted, reframed, repositioned so that it can look a certain way. We all know how this happens, right? Like a study on something, they'll fudge the results by determining what factors they want to study and leaving other factors out. This is how the game works. So with Gemini on the horizon with the true node, we're going to see more of this. So it's going to be very difficult in a lot of ways to navigate the highways and byways of truth during this 18, 19-month stretch. So again, my suggestion is not to be wholly and solely invested in truth, but to be more invested in versatility, asymmetric kinds of strategies of sharing information, and creativity, playfulness, and kind of, I don't want to say monkey wrench things, because that's not really what I'm referring to, but kind of a monkey consciousness, a bit of the trickster. The monkey is the trickster, and Gemini is quite tricksterish. So I think that the real investment in 2020 is to get smarter, to be versatile, to learn something new so that you can do more than one thing. Because I think that, I was thinking about this last night, and I was thinking about millennials last night, and I'm like, how are millennials going to run the world? Because a lot of millennials aren't really equipped to be involved in things like heavy duty manufacturing and repair. That's my own bias and opinion. I'm sure there are plenty of millennials out there that can take care of shit. So, but what's happened is that those kinds of trades, those kinds of occupations, they're not pushed. They're not pushed. Like I looked at the new curriculum for my Bowie High School, and the new curriculum is all about like social justice and fucking, inequity, equity models of learning. Really. Yeah, they'll have some tech stuff in there because they have to, but there's nothing in there about, there's no ideas around shop or shop orientation. It's like that stuff is just going away. It's going away. So, what we're going to see is we're going to see AI sort of be inserted and put into place. So the future leaders of the world can lean into AI and lean on AI because people just don't have those skills. And frankly, a lot of the technology is surpassing the skill level that's already out there. When we were at this hot spring in Texas a couple of weeks ago, two of the kids in this hot spring were college graduates or getting ready to graduate, and they were engineers. And I said, "Wow, this is a really like accelerated field that you're in." And they said, "Yeah." I said, "You've probably got to deal with learning all kinds of new things about new materials and all kinds." They said, "You have no idea." All the stuff that's just kind of waiting to sort of break out when the time is right. And so they've got to upgrade their skill set all the time as well. So we're at a point now where technology is really, really exploding and really taking off. And the best and the brightest who are involved in the interface between physical and virtual technical realms are going to be the people that are going to hold the keys to the future. That's just the way it is. That's the way it is. So there's still hope, but I feel like that the idea is to continue to dumb people down, get them to a point where they're going to be more dependent on outside sources or outside help versus doing things for themselves. Just recently, California has voted to ban gas lawnmowers. This is true. So if you have a gas lawnmower in California, you're fucked. You're fucked. So think about that now. So you'll be able to have an electric lawnmower. How soon will it be before California bans gas cars? It's not going to be that far off. I can tell you that right now. They'll ban gas cars within 10 years. Then they'll say, "Oh, isn't that great? We'll save all this energy." So, okay, what are you going to do with all the batteries? We're going to do with the batteries. You got to change the batteries out. In many cases, the batteries are not reusable. What are you going to do with those batteries? Just like what did you do with the giant props on the wind turbines? You just buried them. And there's quite an exodus of people leaving California now. It's getting people leaving California, Illinois, New York are the three greatest areas where people are migrating out of. And the number one state where they're all going, right here. And what color will Texas be at some point? It's inevitable. It's inevitable. Some people who I've been following this thread a little bit. Some people say the people that in Illinois that are leaving are mostly conservative, that they've had it with Illinois. Okay, I don't know. I don't have the data for that. But it's not just liberals that are leaving these areas, although I think quite a few of them are. Some of them are on a mission, and some of them are like, "Hey, this is getting way too commie for me. I need to have my liberal lifestyle, still be able to have my purchasing power in another part of the world." So that's happening. Anyway, we're here to discuss more things on the horizon that are worth looking at and worth peeking into. I wouldn't say I have a love-hate relationship with Trump, but I think it always bears witnessing that what Trump is doing and actually saying. I was thinking about the Shriners last night. And I'm sure if you watch TV, it's the beginning of the year, people like to make donations because they're looking at their taxes and like to, get some tax write-offs. So the Shriners are pumping their commercials very heavily. The Shriners, of course, are Freemasons. They're an offshoot of the Freemasons, but they're still Freemasons. And I think the Shriner Hospital thing is part of this deal where they're going to do all this good theoretically. So in this other area, they can do things that are theoretically not so good. I think it's part of their formula. So I think a lot of that model kind of exists in the world. It's sort of like balancing out one's conscience through this idea of good works. And Jesus said, of course, you don't have to do the good works. But this is sort of how this is being, how do I say this? Equalized. You know what I'm saying? That this is how it's evened out. So that said, I've been looking around, and Trump is always the guy that I think typifies this idea that there can be something good and something bad, or theoretically, like, okay, we're going to do this, which is really, really good, and we're going to do this, which is, kind of not so good. Now, I'll give you an example. Just recently, Trump went to bat for experimental procedures on people that are, that box has been checked. Sort of like, you're on your way out of here. The only thing that might help you is this really radical experimental procedure. And yeah, it's like, straight Western allopathic high-tech medical. But I also think that for people who have tried everything and have gone down that path, where something that might be available to them that could be really cutting edge, well, now they're going to be able to have that opportunity. I'm not sure if it's gone all the way through the House yet, but I think this is a good thing, right? To allow people to, if they've exhausted every possibility, why not allow them to have an experimental treatment that hasn't been approved or is still being worked out. It might be a game changer, and if it's not, then what does it really matter? I mean, they've exhausted every possibility in a lot of ways. So I consider that to be a good thing. Okay, a good thing. Even though I'm not heavily invested in Western medicine, I consider that at the very least, from a position of choice, real choice, to be a good thing. Then I read this, which is, to me, a bit disturbing. I'm sure there are people in the chat or will show up that will say, okay, well, Q talked about this and Q mentioned it, and this is why they're doing this. There's always that. Trump attacks Apple and pushed to weaken encryption. This is not a pretty picture between Mr. Cook and Mr. Trump. The president's remarks come just a day after the Justice Department publicly called for the tech giant to help unlock a gunman's iPhones. So so let's think about this for a minute. Are bad guys going to use iPhones? Sure. Are good guys going to use iPhones? Sure. Are bad guys going to use Androids? Well, maybe not as much as iPhones because of the encryption piece. Now, again, I think that if we drill down deep enough and go really into the sort of the deep, dark corridors of the NSA, I'd find it very surprising if they couldn't get into an iPhone. I'd find it very surprising. And in fact, if they couldn't, I think we should actually look at cutting their funding back, right? But let's on the surface say that that's not the case. So they're using this crisis to get more encryption data or encrypted data from Apple. President Donald Trump weighed in Tuesday on a reignited battle over encryption, calling out Apple for refusing to create backdoors to help law enforcement agencies unlock iPhones. Just a day after the Department of Justice and Attorney General William Barr criticized the tech giant for a lack of substantial help in its investigation of a deadly shooting at a Florida naval base, the president is now adding to the pressure on Apple. In a tweet Tuesday, Trump wrote, "We are helping Apple all the time on trade," which he is, by the way, apparently, because he's meeting with Cook quite frequently, and so many other issues, yet they refuse to unlock phones used by killers, drug dealers, and other violent criminal elements. He called for Apple to step up to the plate and help the U.S. government in its investigation. Apple declined to comment on Trump's remarks. On Monday, the company said it rejected the Justice Department's characterization that it has been helping with the investigation. The company said it's provided the FBI information on the gunman's iPhone, including account information, iCloud backups, transactional data for several accounts associated with the device. Apple also said it didn't receive requests about a second iPhone in the investigation until January 8th. While it's able to provide all the data for investigations, Apple remains steadfast it won't create a backdoor to encryption to help with investigations. We've always maintained there's no such thing as a backdoor, just for the good guys. Apple said in a statement on Monday, backdoors can also be exploited by those who threaten our national security. This is exactly what I was talking about. And the data of our customers. The ACLU criticized the demand as dangerous and unconstitutional. So this goes back to 2016, where Trump called out Tim Cook and Apple for the same thing. So as an Apple phone user or an iPhone user, I applaud Tim Cook. But again, I find it highly suspicious that somebody with as much power and with as much money and as much talent infused, most likely from other countries, that the NSA can't get in and figure out the backdoor for a freaking iPhone. I find that very, very difficult to believe. Very difficult to believe. So the idea here is that you're safe with an iPhone. I'm not sure you're safe with an iPhone. I'm not sure you're safe with any of your media. So keep an eye on this. But again, it feels like part of the is dying where something good is done, and then it's like, okay, well, this is also another piece that is like, really? Now, I can't confirm this, by the way. I can't confirm it. But I have read that Trump wants to reverse the ruling on Monsanto and Roundup. That's what I've read, and I haven't been able to actually put that together, so I'm not going to talk about it. So there's a lot going on now. There's a hell of a lot going on. I mean, I could just sit here all day and reel off some of these stories where things are being exposed. Here's another one from Health Impact News: the overreach of institutions in government, right here. This is down in Florida. Florida ABC News covers widespread medical kidnappings due to child abuse pediatricians. Essentially, what pediatricians are saying is that parents are abusing their children. And so they get their kids taken away from them. This is a really egregious, this is bad news. As 2020 gets underway, you see more and more mainstream media sources covering medical kidnapping stories, especially when child abuse pediatricians are involved. One of the latest investigative reports comes from the Tampa ABC News I-Team Investigations. They did an investigative report last October regarding medical kidnapping scenes as well. So this is how it's going down. The Florida lawmaker believes that the state's medical experts on child abuse need more checks and balances after an I-Team investigation revealed several pediatricians have made questionable calls against parents who appear to have done everything right. Any position of authority that isn't checked by something is concerning, said Florida Democratic Representative Anna Escamani of Orlando. Escamani was responding to our investigation that found several cases where child abuse pediatricians who were hired to be the state's experts on abuse wrongly accused Florida parents of child abuse. Child abuse pediatricians are a recent specialty medical field and hold enormous influence over whether a child's medical condition is the result of abuse. Their conclusions can also determine if a child needs to be removed from their parents. Court records show these doctors don't always make the right call, causing children, often babies, to be removed from their parents for months unnecessarily. Last year, Nadia Ortez's son and daughter-in-law were torn about from their newborn daughter after a child abuse pediatrician in Miami concluded their newborn daughter's bruises were also the result of abuse. Turns out it was a rare genetic disorder. So this is really troubling. This is really troubling. There's a new field called abuse pediatricians. Can you believe this? So these pediatricians who have been schooled to spot abuse, it's like now, you get to go see this doctor who's going to see if there's been some abuse here. It's like a whole field. And while some abuse probably can and does occur, we've seen here with just this one instance where there was no wrongdoing at all, and they lost their kid for months. And what happens to that child? What happens to that baby? It's terrible, absolutely terrible. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing this massive kind of, again, this Capricornian insertion of the governmental will and the will of the authority at almost every single level. It's getting, it's sort of noxious. It's like kudzu. And we're seeing this now with the South Node in Capricorn. We're seeing just how, in some ways, dangerous this can be. And it's always like, well, we're going to make a few mistakes along the way. And it's really too bad that little girl was taken away from. But we'd rather err on the side of caution. You hear that shit all the time. And we can guarantee you that the child was in very good care. Really, we guarantee. Mm-hmm. You want to sign a waiver on that? So if we found that the child wasn't taken care of, and we can sue your ass for upwards of hundreds of millions of dollars, you want to put your name on that? Oh yeah, let's see how committed you are to that. So there's that. That's breaking. And you got to check this out. This is another one. Right? Here's another story. January 15th, same website, Health Impact News. This is where the government fudges their statistics, which is what they do. This gets back to this whole idea of cheating we talked about yesterday. Less than 1% of vaccine injuries reported in the government National Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. So this is why the statistics on vaccines and vaccine injuries theoretically are low, because less than 1% are reported. Less than 1%. You got to be kidding me. Since VAERS began collecting reports in 1990, as of November 14, 2019, there have been 8,067 vaccine-related deaths reported, and about 47% of those deaths for children under the age of 3. There have been 17,394 reports of permanent disability following vaccinations. So there's significant underreporting. And the statistics are all there. So I'm going to leave some of these links for you guys to follow up on. But again, I'm bringing this up because there's a theme that's being exposed right now at a high level, where we're looking at this vast overreach, the overextension of authority, and in ways that undermine not only our ability to self-determine and self-govern, but also put us at risk, specifically in the case of these parents who are losing their kids in Florida. It puts a family at risk for being exposed to somebody who has been trained in order to ultimately make a decision on the removal of a child from a home. All right? Then we haven't even gotten into the training methods or the certification for being an abuse pediatrician. My God. All right, let me check in with you guys, chat room. Again, this is like the cleansing of the systemic toxicity. But this is kind of what we do here on the show. And you may not like it at times, but it's part of the process so that we can get to the other stuff, right? So we can get to the good stuff about, what we can be and how we can manifest our potential in a very deep and divine, sacred way, the way that our internal blueprint that each and every one of us has inside of ourselves. All right, let me check in with you guys, see what you have to say about all this. Smartest chat room on the internet. Where are we now? There we go. All medical industry is systemic abuse of authority. Yes, thank you. I'll take this to the pediatrician when they try to shame me for questioning the vaccines. Awareness is crucial. Ani, we got to get together. I got to hook you up to be the sheriff in Chatlandia soon. All herbs regarded as mind-bending drugs. They could create a new special classification for herbs. The Delphi technique. Oh, the Delphi technique. Yes, of course. Let's see. I like oregano. Great buzz. Psychiatry is just abuse. Nothing else. I found something on that. I found something on the psychiatry piece. Let me see if I can nail this thing down. Where was this? By the way, good job to all you people that showed up in Virginia. Apparently, they dropped the AR confiscation from whatever they're working on after thousands of NRA members showed up. Look, I'm down with that, right? I'm really down with that. You guys, this is where boots on the ground actually mean something. And I think Laura went out there. Laura S. went out there. And thanks for doing that. Here, I'll throw this out there too. I'm going to put these links in today's show. I'm gonna do just a quick screen share with this. It's the same thing. This is exactly what we're talking about. This crossed my radar in the last 24 hours and bears witnessing. So let's do this. Check this out. So this is just what you were talking about with psychiatric abuse. This is from ISEPP, the International Society for Ethical Psychology and Psychiatry. This is by Gary G. Coles, MD. Lies that my medical school professors taught me and which were reinforced by my drug reps. Number one, the FDA, U.S. Food and Drug Administration, tests all new psychiatric drugs. Lie. Myth two, FDA approval means that a psychotropic drug is effective long-term. Lie. Myth three, FDA approval means a psychotropic drug is safe long-term, which is different. Effective and safe are two different things. Lie. Myth four, mental illnesses are caused by brain chemistry imbalances. He says such simplistic theories have probably been perpetrated by big pharma and the psychiatric industry because they feel that they have to resort to 20-second sound bites of propaganda to convince patients why they should be taking dangerous drugs. Myth number five, antidepressant drugs work like insulin for diabetics. Myth number six, SSRI discontinuation syndromes shouldn't be thought of as withdrawal syndromes. 7, Ritalin is safe for children and adults. Myth 8, psychoactive drugs are totally safe for humans. Myth 9, mental illnesses have no known cause. Oh, right. That's a big one. Myth 10, psychotropic drugs are safe to use long term. So here's a guy that was educated in the system, in the field, and has obviously done his legwork, has probably had to prescribe thousands of prescriptions at some point, saw the light, now, again, turning the corner. This is where we're at, right? This is where we're at. This is not necessarily about truth per se, but it's about revealing what's already there. This is kind of like the back door of the Apple encryption program, like the back door of the reality encryption program is open right now. And it's happening. It's opening. And you're going to be able to see this from both sides. And just wait till the impeachment proceedings start to get rolling. Oh, that's going to be a real doozy. A real doozy. I will pay attention to that, mostly for this stuff. All right, let me see what you guys are talking about in the chat room. Where you're at, what's going on. I'm about ready to sign off here today. Let's see. What do you all think about hypnotherapy? Good question, Miranda. If that one gets out, KDO, to a wide audience goes viral, that MD would likely lose his license. Basically, yeah. What did Steve say? Apparently said something funny. Psychiatry can't cure soul sickness. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. The Codex Elementaris. Yeah, I know about Codex. Let's see what else we have here. What did Steve say? He said something funny. I want to see what he said. I got to go back and chat. I'm not seeing it. I'm sure it's funny, though. If everything is royalty, if everyone has their deity within, no inequality. That's true. There wouldn't be this hierarchy that has been superimposed upon us. But it takes us to get up off our knees, doesn't it? To realize that. That's what I think. Okay. Well, thanks for being here today. I really appreciate you guys. I think we've been going at this for about our regular 55 minutes of flame or thereabouts. I'll be back tomorrow with more because it's going to be a Snap Crackle Pop news week. There's stuff I pulled up today that didn't even cover, stuff on um, Iran and the assassination and some other things, but I didn't pull it up. So maybe we cover those things tomorrow. In the meantime, you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to step on what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for being a part of today's show. And when this is all processed, I'll put the links for the various articles that I've pulled up today, so you guys can look at them and drill down even more. All right, have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow. Ciao for now.